Mr. Paul Tamburello, welcome to Heroic Hospitality.
Awesome.
It's good to see you.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Really, really cool. I started this podcast to really shine the light on entrepreneurs, nightlife enthusiasts and hospitality professionals and workers. And one of my most fond memories when I first moved to Denver was I had to figure out who were the guys in Denver, who was in town that I needed to talk to. And at the time, your name kept coming up as a developer who cared deeply about restaurants, hospitality, and food service. And so you actually, I don't know if you remember, but you actually took the time, took me around a couple of these neighborhoods and showed me around. And I really have always since then just respected you greatly for taking the time out of your day for someone like me who was new to town that aspired to open their own restaurant. So that was time, that was money, and I say thank you now. Again.
Very cool. It was an easy yes, because I think at the time I could just see the passion you had for doing something that was really unique.
Okay.
And you were so polished and just you were ready. You were in the moment, and it was that was a great opportunity for me.
Well, thank you.
A lot of times you roll around with people that aren't inspired and they're just figuring out how to make another buck, and that wasn't your
I definitely am someone that tries not to phone it in, and I know you are too. It was a pleasure to do a little research on you before today, and I can't wait to learn a little bit more about you. So thanks again for joining us. So the real estate started now born and raised, it sounds like.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Born and
raised. It looked like that. And Italian immigrants for parents.
My grandfather was a Sicilian immigrant. And on my dad's side, of my grandmother she was Spanish from Mexico and part Acoma, we believe, Indian, native. And then my mom, German, Irish, Scottish, and French. So I'm a little,
I saw the picture that you have in your little man ice cream shops, and I always thought you were the little man, but actually he was the little man.
Yeah, my dad, my dad probably at his prime was probably 5'8".
Yeah.
And as he got older, he just shrunk, right? Like all of us do. And my sisters originally kind of started teasing him, calling him little man. And then it just became this term of endearment.
Yeah. And the picture I'm referring to, there was a small child in the picture.
Yeah,
that was you. That's why, or that was your brother. That's why I thought that was the little man, not your father.
Yeah. No, it's my dad.
Just wanted to be clear on that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So you're, it sounds like it feels like your first foray into being a business success is in real estate. And one of my biggest takeaways was you were the top 1% earner in your first year or something like that. I read something like that, or I don't know if that was
it was,
if you wrote that or
I wrote it. Yeah. My mom said I was. No, I got it was a really small thing. It was just like a rookie of the year in our company.
Oh, got it.
It was no big deal.
It was an internal thing.
It was
okay, cool.
Thing. Yeah, probably not anything.
I love things like that, but I saw that, and then so you basically, I'd love to know what it was like to be kind of the tip of the spear to revitalize a neighborhood, not only to revitalize it, but build a neighborhood. And I'm referring to LoHi in Denver, Colorado, because a lot of people aspired to either work with you or get to know you more because of what you're doing, what you're developing. And what did that why did you choose that specific neighborhood, LoHi in Denver, to kind of, anchor your foundation in real estate?
Yeah. I would say one of the smartest guys I knew in real estate always talked about the barbell theory in real estate.
Okay.
And he said, if there's a center that is really going off, and then there's just kind of no man's land between, and then there's another center that's really going off, he said, you want to be in the middle, right?
Okay.
And at the time, the Central Platte Valley was just starting to all the railroad tracks, Switchyard was all clearing out. It was starting to develop. And then West Highland had already begun, kind of transitioning. And, that lower Highland piece, or whatever you want to call it, everybody has all kinds of different names they want to call it. We called it LoHi, but just was sort of like a forgotten little gem in my mind.
Okay.
I had family who grew up over on the north side, and I have lots of fond memories of old Italian restaurants in the area as a kid. But as an adult, after I got my real estate license, I started like checking the area out, and I was like, why is nobody here? There was a lot of perception around safety in the area at the time. And,
it not being safe.
Yeah, not being safe. And so, but I just stepped into it. And it was funny. There were realtors who wouldn't even go show property in the area. They were so afraid to go into it.
Damn.
But
tells you how young Denver is when you really
really
peel back the
layers.
It
was funky. There was definitely, it was a transitioning neighborhood for sure. It was, in the midst of a deep transition, or as some people like to call it, gentrification. I've been labeled the gentrifier for sure. Not a term of endearment, but I think it's the wrong term for neighborhoods that are transitioning.
Yeah.
Every neighborhood goes through an evolution. I
just like human evolution.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never sold a house ever for a family who grew up in that neighborhood who weren't so excited to sign the paperwork that they were losing their mind. Because I remember I sold a house for a lady. She was in her 80s. She had 3 children, all, in this market, having a hard time getting into real estate themselves, to buy a home. And we sold the house that her and her husband paid $3,500 for. And we sold it for like $650. And she was able to do down payments for all of her kids on their houses, and they didn't have to go to the hinterland. They were like in, Wheat Ridge and other neighborhoods where they wanted to be. And it was, that normal evolution.
Who else would you say kind of was anybody alongside you on that journey when this kind of redevelopment in that very specific area in Denver, which is arguably probably the most sought after neighborhood if you're from a residential standpoint, because there's so much walking traffic, so many awesome things, great views, like all of it. Was anybody kind of walking beside you during that journey as a developer?
When I first started there, no, not really. But then I encountered a guy named Mark Brannon, who has done some pretty funky projects down on, I think it's Blake. He did the what's it called? The Bag Factory lofts. It's that one that has that crazy glass elevator, and it's outside.
I don't know if I've seen that.
You've probably driven by it.
I've driven. Yeah. Okay.
He grew up, his mom, Wopo Harapo, I think is her artistic name. She has all kinds of installations all over New York City. And, she was this just, incredible human being. And a lot of that, he was inspired by his mom and family. And
sure.
But the guy gave me a degree in risk. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that most people, most design decisions now are made on Excel spreadsheets, right? It's not people taking a risk to do anything. And, I was already in the neighborhood. But he was the one who sort of taught me to take a risk in terms of some of the real estate we were looking at. And he was taking big risk and doing crazy things. And I jumped in with him, and then have just kind of grown and parlayed that into a lot of other things. So.
When you talk about risk, actually, what was his name?
Mark Brannon.
Okay. Mark Brannon.
Yeah. He's still doing development in the area. He's my mad scientist friend.
Yeah. Would you consider him a mentor?
I would consider him somebody that, a mentor in the sense, in that time, I was, like most people, I've always been, very risk tolerant, but when you're signing up for a $500,000 loan or a $5 million loan, that's terrifying. It really is the first time you do it. And he just had this very whimsical approach to it, and just trusted that he would always figure it out. And I just sort of learned that, that same belief in, I'm going to figure it out. If it goes south, I got the right team, I got the right people, and we're going to figure it out. We're not in this to, always not every deal is going to be a home run. Matter of fact, I don't even try to hit home runs. If I can get a solid base or second base hit, I feel good because it leaves money on the table for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And you live by that, because I know you are not only a really big philanthropist, but you give back to the community in a lot of different ways. Your One Scoop program for Little Man, which I'd love to touch on in a bit. And I know you've given a portion of your earnings to charities. And what was the motivation or inspiration to be such a giver? Like, what is it about? Just like your character? Is it about, what is it about? And maybe explain a little bit about those two things too, because I don't want to misspeak if I.
Sure. My father only had a third grade education. He was basically illiterate for most of my, as he got older, he learned to read. He never really learned to write. We drove a forklift his whole life when he got out of the war. My mom went to night school during the Depression and, was raising kids and doing whatever she could on the side to, there's 5 children in the family.
5.
So, and when you grow up like that, you don't hold resources, you circulate them, right?
Mm-hmm. That's an interest. Can you say that again?
Well, I said, you don't hold resources, you circulate them. Mm-hmm. And that's the way my parents lived their whole life. I remember when my dad was the oldest boy, and which is why, in the Depression, when the Depression hit, and my grandfather from Sicily, he emptied ash pits. So he's basically a trash man. Because back in those days, everybody burned their trash, right? So he would go around emptying ash pits, and when the Depression hit, he needed help. And so my dad was the oldest boy, and he started working and never stopped working the rest of his life. And I remember when he passed away, all of my uncles and aunts came to him and just said, we'd have never made it without you, right? Wow. And that's what you do, right? When you circulate those resources. And they were incredible mentors for me in that way. And I hope that I, am doing what I can to live up to that. Right. I do believe in that law of circulation, right? The more you invest in other people and time and energy and everything, it comes back to you in ways that maybe not always are financial, but are ways that you can't measure sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's so important that people hear that, because not everything is measured by a monetary gain.
Yeah.
And those that do that are so short-sighted that they get out of my orbit pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Just because I want to be around people that don't look at life in that way, and I think that's why we've become good friends, and I'm really, really proud on who we choose to surround ourselves with. So would you consider your father a mentor?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Both my parents. Yes.
Do you have any other mentors? Do you have any?
Oh, I have lots of people who've, inspired me over the years, influenced me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the list is long.
I bring that up because, in this day and age, when everybody's behind their screen, I worry about that. Mm-hmm. I worry about the younger generation not having access to someone that they can talk to and that helps them understand that taking risks is a valuable exercise. And so that's another reason why I wanted to start this podcast, is to offer access to people that might not have those resources. And so is there any advice that you can give a younger person, whether it's in hospitality, which I can't wait to talk about with you, or real estate or development? One thing I do want to recognize as well when you answer this question, please, is that you don't just build buildings and you just don't rehab buildings. You actually care about the final product. So it's not just a bunch of 2x4s and drywall. It actually, there's a significant amount of design build that goes into it. So so you're doing it different than a lot of other people are doing it. But going back to my first question, can you offer any insight?
A couple things. I just finished a book it's called The Good Ancestor, and it's written by a guy who was inspired by a quote by Jonas Salk, who was the guy who invented the polio vaccine. And everybody wanted him to patent it and whatever. And he was like, what are you talking? Like, this can save millions of people's lives. No, I'm not going to patent it. And no, we're not going to make, he just gave it away.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he is quoted that saying, you know, he said, I think the most important question you can ask yourself is, are you being a good ancestor?
Ooh.
Right? We're so caught in short-term thinking. Everything is the next poll, the next 15 minutes, the next like, the next, everything is short-term thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really have long-term thinkers anymore. Or very few people, you know, are long-term thinkers. And I think that's something that the younger generations coming up really are going to have to struggle with, because we're in a situation right now where I think people are literally concerned about the next fix, the next whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, we're anesthetizing ourselves with drugs and alcohol and food and adventure. And there, you know, we don't take deep dives into anything anymore. Everything is very shallow.
Safe.
Yeah, safe.
Safe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I you know, it wasn't utopia, but it was very different when you didn't have, you know, this in front of you all day long. And I had dinner with a friend of mine the other day, and he goes, dude, he said, I'm struggling. Like, you know, he's like, I come home, and he said, and my wife every day is, when I come home, she's staring in the palm of her hand. And I was like, what do you mean, dude? He goes,
wow.
You just, I come home and all she's sitting on Instagram, and we all do it. It's not, he does it too. We you know, it's an easy thing to get trapped by.
Yeah.
And for younger kids now, growing up with it, I didn't grow up with this, right? I can't imagine from the day I'm born, somebody hands me a phone and I'm already, you know, I know guys my age whose grandchildren are helping them figure their phone out.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So
yeah, it's a struggle. And
everybody says that. I don't know what to do about it necessarily, but I know that this idea of short-term thinking is, I think, part of that culture.
And the book that is it full? Is your book complete?
Oh, it's not mine. It's a book I read.
It's a book you read. Got it.
It's called The Good Ancestor.
Good Ancestor. Yeah. Got it. And you just finished it?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really inspiring. I also think that there's a guy named Richard Rohr who talks about dualistic thinking, right? That he says the biggest mistake that sort of faith communities made over the last 2,000 years, let's say it, is that they didn't teach people how to think critically. It was either black or white, and they failed at really helping people navigate through life, learning, having the skills to critically think. And that's why I think it's so easy for people now to put us in these boxes of, you know, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, you know, pro-abortion, anti-abortion. You know, life just isn't that, you know, it's dualistic, right? It's just not. We've made it that way, but it's not.
You know, one thing also, like, and I know rejection's hard, more hard for this younger generation, but you know, when I reached out to you and you took the time after, you know, a handful of courting conversations, emails and phone calls and whatever, but you did take the time. You weren't necessarily a mentor to me at the time, but you did expose me to, you did expose a young person who had drive and a skill set that was new to an area. You gave them the time and confidence to move forward, even if it wasn't with you, you know? And so I think that what we can do is encourage folks like us that have influence to take the time if somebody's asking you for it.
Absolutely.
You don't have to be a mentor. It doesn't have to be this thing.
No.
But I'm sure if an employee came up to you and like, Paul, can I please like have 30 minutes of your time? I have this idea and I would like to hear what you thought about it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'd give that to them, you know?
Try.
And it is, and you try, or,
yeah.
But it is important that anybody that has a knowledge or a skill set or influence in some way does give a time, energy, and maybe some feedback.
Yeah.
Because we need it as the younger generation does need that. So.
Yeah. I don't think you ever really know where people are at. Right. And, you know, you taking, in another life, I worked with kids. I was a youth minister for like 12 years. And I'll still have young people today who will reach out to me out of the blue. Haven't talked to them in 20 years. And they'll be like, man, when I was 16, you helped me with whatever. And that changed the trajectory of my whole life, or it made a difference or whatever. And I'm sure all of you have had that experience on whether, you just never know where people are at. And that 15-minute conversation with that guy out front who's thinking about dreaming about opening a restaurant down the street and runs into you with all this experience and, everything that you have. And if you just give him or her the time of day, wow, that's a validation. That's, some wisdom. That's whatever. Yeah.
It's just good energy because people have done it for me and people have done it for you, obviously.
Absolutely.
And it's a great position to be in. It feels good. And it's good to know like someday that will have an influence on them if they're serious about the questions that they asked and the evolution that they aspire to, Cool. The fun stuff. So, and I'd love for you to share your relationship with some of these restaurants that you have in LoHi, with Linger, Root Down, and the relationships that you've developed over time. I know that you have some interest in some of these restaurants and only share what you're comfortable with, but like, what does that look like? Because you're also someone that does support, entrepreneurs in monetary ways. And what does that look like through you? And how do you make those types of decisions? How do you weed out the bullshit?
Oh man, I've been so lucky, honestly.
Yeah.
I guess I'm pretty good at, reading people. I feel like I have a pretty good sixth sense about, people. And I also grew up with a family who's, people talk about getting their hustle on, right? Like, some people will work, a friend of mine the other day was saying, man, I got all these people who work for me who want to do it. They want a 4-day work week and a puppy. And it's like, sadly, I get work-life balance, but I also get that I'm just somebody who I love what I'm doing. So I might work 16 hours in a day and I leave invigorated and energized. And the difference is I'm doing what I love.
Sure.
Right. And I hope everybody can find that, have the incredible fortune to find that.
Well, the entrepreneurs that you've, come across in the hospitality, like a Dave Query, for instance, like, what are some of these, maybe just pick an experience and talk to us about an evolution that you've witnessed of someone that was passionate about restaurants that you had a hand in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be monetary, but like, maybe it was your building. Maybe it was,
I would say, Justin Cucci was somebody who was brand new to Denver when I met him. I literally just met him walking across the street, and he was thinking about leasing some space, and he was just, getting the lay of the land, a little bit like how we met. And I just, kind of talked to him, and we started having some meetings, talking about his dreams, his passions, all that. And then I got to a place where I was like, okay, this guy's legit. Like, I believe in him. I believe in his vision. I don't think any of us had seen the master that he is, right? Certainly at that time, I had a sense about it, but the mastery that he has in restaurants is, evident, I think, in the Denver market, the Denver scene.
I mean, he's a wizard.
Yeah. And so I showed him an old gas station that I had, and I was like, dude, this is where you should do your restaurant. And so we talked about it. And the way that I sort of invest in entrepreneurs or in that world is basically helping them with a much bigger tenant finish package, and then often do some sort of like revenue share with them. So it's a shared risk and a shared success sort of thing. So they get resources up front to help build out, and then that they didn't have. And instead of taking a loan, and then I'm like, okay, if it cranks, if it works, then I get a little piece of that. And if it doesn't, then I don't get any of it. Right. That's the way it is. And Justin and I had built a great relationship over the years, and, worked with him on Root Down was his first deal, did, Linger with him, and then did Ophelia's with him. So he's another one that took the time out of
out of his day to talk with me.
Yeah.
I actually did a couple stages with him
Oh, cool.
at those restaurants.
Yeah,
both of
he's
those
a very
restaurants.
generous guy.
And
Yeah.
and he offered
That
his
doesn't
time
surprise
and
me.
energy
Mm-hmm.
and support to a young person that was aspiring to open their own restaurant. And
Mm-hmm.
definitely, big hats off to Justin Cucci.
Yeah,
with
for sure.
I mean, with his wizardry, and I mean that with all the sincerity that you could muster, because he is and does a lot for his teams as well.
Oh yeah,
like he treats his teams so good.
Yeah,
and it's clear because they stay for such a long period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, unusual in the restaurant industry, hospitality.
Unusual. Yeah,
y'all better stick around.
It's true. It's true. Do you guys have anything in the hopper, like together, or meet as friends? And
yeah, Justin sold basically edible beets to the employees.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if he's got another restaurant in him or not, or if he's going to go on to other adventures. Right, he has he's super talented in a multiplicity of ways, and I think he if he puts his mind to something, it will work. He's also an incredible musician too, so I don't
that's amazing.
Yeah, we'll see what
and then around like 2008, is that when you opened Little Man Ice Cream?
2008 did Little
Man. Right between a handful of his restaurants, like right in the middle.
Well, he
of
wasn't.
Like
Linger wasn't there. The
Little Man was before Linger.
Yeah, okay. Where Linger was literally the largest body freezer refrigerator in the region.
And when he means body, he means
human bodies. So all day long, these little white vans would pull up, and then they would back in this garage, and then they would pull back out and leave. And those vans had people who had just deceased, right, or died. Yeah. And it was still a functioning mortuary at the time. Yeah, I mean, I remember when President Obama came and did the whole Democratic thing here. One day out in front of Little Man, I saw all these guys in their sunglasses, and they're talking into their sleeves, and I was like, "What's going on?" And I went over and talked to the guy, and he said, "Well, this is the largest body refrigerator in the region, so if something goes down, this is where they're bringing all the dignitaries, right?"
At least they could throw a couple jokes.
Yeah. So, but no, yeah, we did Little Man in 2008. We had purchased the lower building from Olinger, or SCI is the parent corporation that owned it. And then we had an option on the upper building and did the upper building. I don't know what it was, maybe 6 years later or something like that, 7 years later. But
what was your input on the concept of the actual build out? The anything you visibly see, did you have a lot of input in that?
You know what, I would say that
because it's so cool.
The area that I
fun,
really like to focus on is the physical layout of things.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I'm really great at space planning, and that's where I probably lent the majority of my influence. There are a few little touches in all of the restaurants that I'll be like, "Hey, what if you did this here?" And then it works. But Dave Query has a whole team of people that work with him at Big Red F, and he does beautiful interiors. And Justin has, he's just, he's a master at it as well. Like his sense of color and, like just looking around your space here, you've done some beautiful things.
Sure.
And like, working with artists, working with fabricators, working with, people doing just,
and that's how
you
and I
immersion spaces. Right?
Yeah, that's how you and I got reconnected. When we were opening this.
Mm-hmm.
I walked you through, and your eyes were you. I think we both had a great time with that conversation.
Yeah.
But after that, you introduced me to Handsome Little Devils. I know you work with them a handful of times, and
guys are
mad
incredible.
Respect for those guys as well. So that's really cool. I mean, I think that like the Olinger sign, that iconic Olinger sign, taking off, keeping it lit except for the O, is just so smart and so fun.
That was we were on the roof, and one of the architects on the project just was like, there was no name for the restaurant, and then he goes, "You should just call it Linger." And it was just like
done.
Justin loved it, and of course ran with it. So it made so much sense.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So tell me a little bit about Little Man, and do you have any plans for expansion? I know you have a handful of locations. I know you have a kind of probably somewhere your inner brain is the Willy Wonka that is presenting this little Willy Wonka vibe to the world with Little Man on Colfax, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we, Little Man for me started as a hobby, right? Like, it's so funny. Everybody knows me as the ice cream guy, but really I've been doing real estate for like 30 years.
Yeah.
And, we had this piece of land between the two buildings. We looked at maybe doing an office building in the center there, and just didn't, I didn't want to, I felt like the two buildings needed that space between them. And anyway, we kicked around a lot of ideas and then decided, I was like, there's no ice cream up here. There's no the only park in all of that Highland area is across the street,
which is very small.
Yeah. And I was like, it just needs a community. There's no communal center, right? There's no anything. So I was like, let's just do a really crazy, iconic structure and do ice cream. And so I was talking to lots of people about it. I got some really good friends who are artists here in Denver, are very well known, Reed Weimer and Chandler Romeo. They said, have you ever looked at the book California Crazy? And so they gave me the book, and the book, it has all these photos of roadside architecture from the like 1920s to kind of 1940s or 50s, where they built these crazy iconic structures all along the highways when everybody was starting to do road trips because they had cars and all this stuff, right? So like the big giant donut you drive through and you get donuts and coffee, or the Coney Island hot dog, or like some of those things. And there was a milk can similar to what we ended up with in there, and we just got really inspired by that. And Ted Schultz was the architect I worked on that project with, and we kind of put our own spin on it, and here it is today. So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
And a lot of your infrastructure on the on the customer facing side is kind of all open. Is that correct or incorrect?
Infrastructure.
Like a lot of the sides pop up and then you order. So people wait in line. There's no inside of the space.
No, it's
is
a
what
kiosk.
I'm saying. So yeah, it's a kiosk.
It's 180 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a second level above the heads of your employees? Is there any more like storage up there or anything, or is it just the can on the?
It's just the can.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. It's the can. So, and that's, I have an incredible operations team there where I'm pretty much out of the day to day. And, they're just amazing. And we're about to transfer. They wouldn't have a line around the block. Yeah. We're about to transfer. I'm about to transfer some ownership to them, and they're really, I think, going to run with it.
Good.
They're really excited about it. And yeah,
do you have any plans for expansion?
Yeah, I think they're, we're basically, between all the different concepts, we're in 7 locations now. And I mean, we don't have any big cookie? Like we're gonna do 100 stores or anything like that, but we're interested.
You'll keep it in Denver or Colorado?
I don't know.
Yeah,
we get asked all the time.
Oh, I bet.
I'm saying twice a month I'll get an inquiry from somewhere. We'd love to do a Little Man in San Diego. We want to do a Little Man in South Beach. We want to do a Little Man. It's so. Yeah, we have to figure out where we're going and what we're doing.
That's awesome. And give us just a nugget about your single scoop program. Single scoop?
Oh, no, it's called Scoop for Scoop.
Scoop for Scoop.
When I first was working on Little Man, I worked with an organization that took doctors and took them abroad and did an immersion, usually into a very rural, remote community, and we would provide healthcare. And I got invited to do logistics for them. And so for about 10 years, like probably 4 or 5 times a year, I would go away for 10 days, 2 weeks, take a group of doctors. And that was, it's when you really see how the rest of the world lives, you can't help but be shaped by it, right? You really can't. And I mean, when you see some of the places we've been, we went into Haiti after the earthquake. We've been to Myanmar after the tsunami, wiped out 250,000 people who were living in shacks, right? And their whole, they're lucky if they make $15 a month, right? I mean, these, communities that are really struggling. And so when I came back, I really wanted to do some sort of health and nutrition thing. I read a book called Raising Self-Reliant Children in a Self-Indulgent World. And in the book, this is from the 90s, this status from the 90s, and it's gotten much better. But it said, according to UNICEF, that a child in a developing country dies every 2 seconds of usually a disease related to malnutrition. Now it's probably, every 10 seconds. Right. Wow. So if you think about it, that's a lot better, but it's still a devastating statistic.
Yeah.
And so, we really, when we started Little Man, wanted to focus on health and nutrition for particularly children in developing countries. And so we originally started every scoop of ice cream, we'd do a scoop of rice. And the reality is, some communities don't have rice. They have beans or they have other, things. And so we just allocate a certain, amount of money for every single scoop. And it has just opened up the world to our employees.
In what way?
Well, we pool all those resources and it's their decision where it goes, right?
Oh, wow.
We have our mission. There's no veto on my part. There's no whatever. We have this pool of money, and once a month we all gather. It's our community action committee. And it's like, here are the 30 requests we have. Yeah. And some of them go to, local schools and programs, and every one of our stores has a different philanthropic focus. So Little Man is about health and nutrition, really around the world. Sweet Cooey's is all about women's empowerment. So we fund programs that, help support women in their, journey. We have our airplane wing out at Eastbridge is all about STEM and science and technology. DANG is all about the performing arts and arts. So every one of them has a different philanthropic focus, and the teams get to decide where to allocate those resources.
Wow, so, that's really empowering. That's so cool.
It's cool. It's really, and we're constantly trying to find ways to engage more. It's amazing though. Like when you say to a young person, if I gave you $1,000, where would you donate it? And they don't have any sense of that. Like, I don't know where I donate it. I don't know what I would do with it. Right. Like, and so it's, there's a great book called The Soul of Money, written by a woman, Lynn Twist. And, it's this incredible resource that oftentimes we think its only job is to benefit our lives, when really it's an incredibly powerful tool to benefit other people's lives, right? And in the same time benefit ours.
Of course, right? Yeah. It's amazing. What an inspiration, man. Yeah. Like, I really just appreciate our friendship and appreciate what you've done for Denver, what you've done for entrepreneurs like myself, who are, just have an idea, and you're, and a lot of times, the conduit to help them achieve those dreams, goals, aspirations. And you're an amazing asset to this planet in Denver. So thank you for,
it's very kind,
for being here. And thanks for our friendship. And I look forward to many more chats.
Yeah. I look forward to
Is there any way that we can support you or the Scoop for Scoop program? Is there like a link that we can do to like not have to go buy ice cream? Obviously we want to eat ice cream at Little Man, please.
We always say giving's never tasted so good. So,
yeah. Well, that's fun.
Not really. I mean,
Francesca loves ice cream.
Yeah.
I go to Little Man like 3 times a week.
Oh, nice. Yeah. What's your favorite flavor?
So I love your guys' hot fudge. So I actually just do sliced bananas. Vanilla is my favorite, and then hot fudge.
Oh, that's.
She didn't have to hesitate for that answer.
Yeah, not at all.
I have a microphone, but it fits with the podcast. I was going to ask, do you have like something in place from the top down, like with your employees? Because I've noticed that every time I'm there, they're all so happy and they're so nice. And even though the line is so long, they don't rush you and they take their time with you. And it's a really good experience. So I didn't know if
That's amazing.
speak to that or why that is there.
Well, thank you for noticing that. Like, that's the team that I want.
And really, if you didn't hear what Francesca asked was, which is a great question, how do you empower your employees to be so present after after someone just waited in line for 30 minutes, and now all of a sudden you're here, you're in line, and now this employee is just so present and so wide-eyed and happy to help you with another scoop of ice cream that they just got done doing 500 of them, you know.
Oh, they would be so happy to hear that. We have our ops team, or the 2 operations people, right after this. I have a meeting with them. I'll have to share this with them. But that's a great question, and it is something that we focus on. You know, hospitality is a big piece. It's you know, and it may sound like a cliche, but we really are trying to authentically live it.
Yeah.
But we say that Little Man isn't an ice cream store. It's really about leadership. It's a leadership program for youth.
Mm-hmm.
And our vehicle is ice cream. And so we have this thing called Scoop Camp. We have all these different, you know, leadership components that we do in our training and throughout our time. And we really hope that when people leave Little Man, I mean, my biggest dream would be if people were like, oh my gosh, if you worked at Little Man, like, you know, that puts your resume on the top of the pile, right? Like that people recognize that. Yeah, that's an aspirational thing. We're still working on it. But I mean, Lauren Martinez, who is our director of operations, is just, he started working for me when he was in high school or in college. I actually just out of high school, scooping ice cream. And now he runs the operation. He is a master at building culture. And he is, you know, he's a very inspirational guy. And he really, you know, gets across that message that we're selling. He created this thing called the 6 senses of Little Man. And we have this thing about rice, and it's like, be real, connect, ignite, you know, these things about tied to the Scoop for Scoop program with rice. And yeah, he's just amazing at it. And he really hammers home that we're not just selling ice cream, we're selling an experience, right? In that moment, nobody comes to an ice cream store. And we always say, you never know where people are at. Like, we've had people who literally are leaving the hospital having just lost somebody, and something that they find comforting for themselves is a scoop of ice cream. Mm-hmm. Or people who are celebrating, just got married, or people who are just want to have a day out, or, you know, just, it's a whole spectrum. And we get to like dispense happiness, right? It's like pretty amazing that like we're selling, have the opportunity to sell this thing that people love.
It's amazing.
Right. That's a really cool thing.
You're an inspiration and inspiring on so many levels. And I look forward to catching up offline. But
cool, brother.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for today.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And is there any way we can support you aside from visiting Little Man? Is there anything that you want a last nugget for us?
I would have a question for you. Like,
okay, let's hear it.
When I remember when I was about, I don't know, I was 20 at the time, and I met this guy. His name was Bill, and he owned the Coors distributorship for Colorado, right? Or one of them. I think there was maybe 3 at the time. I don't remember the structure, and he was, you know, a really wealthy guy. And I remember I said to him, I said, oh man, Bill, I can't wait until I can make money so that I can give. And he said, well, are you giving now? And I said, no, not really. And he was like, if you're not giving now, you're not going to give when you have money.
Yeah.
Right. And that
interesting
kind of woke me up to this idea that, hey man, if it's, you know, if it's one less beer or one less 12 pack or whatever,
100%.
And I can, you know, donate $10 to somebody that month, that, you know, the power, the inherent power of that resource for somebody really can make a difference. And I know it seems simple, $10, but it really, you know, for some people, that's an entire, you know, day or 2 days salary, depending on where you deploy those resources. Right. So, you know, I don't know what you're doing here and what your philanthropy goals and, you know, how you structure it. But yeah, if there was anything you could do for me, it would be just you embracing that, right?
You can count on me for that. I don't have a great answer. My business partner and I talk about it all the time. We've been open 1.5 years now, and we've talked a lot about how do we give back and who do we give back to?
Right.
What we do and our passion definitely lies within art and how to support artists and able to create art in order to create their art, because it takes time and resources to do that. And a lot of these folks have to work 3, 4, 5 jobs to, even though they aspire to be an artist. So there will be at some point an opportunity for us to give back. We're very close to figuring that out. And when we do, I would love to reach out and talk to you about that.
I would be happy to celebrate that
but
with you, because it is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
We talk about it all the time. And I think you were what we needed to kick our butts a little bit, and we're on it.
All right.
You can count on me for that.
Good.
All right.
Looking forward to that. All right, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you.
Thank you.